Hello and welcome to Merlin's Manor. Today I'm going to give my thoughts on Dogstar Shippers, a 1 to 2 player game designed by Sam Pugh and published by True Territory Games. In Dogstar Shippers, you start with a small ship that you can upgrade as you earn credits by delivering cargo, completing dangerous missions, discovering new bases, and earning valor points to become top dog of the Sirius system. Now, I was sent a copy of this game to review. And before I get into the how to play and review of this game, I wanted to mention that this game will be on sale September 2nd through the 9th on GameCrafter.com as part of their back to school sale. I'll put a link to this down in the description below. Now before we get into my thoughts on the game, I'm going to go over how to play this game. And since the game is fairly simple to learn and there are a few how to plays out there, I'll be doing a fairly comprehensive how to play for this one. Now in Dogstar Shippers, you will start out with a basic ship with hull set to max and 5,000 credits, and your faction loyalty will be set to neutral. You will then reveal a card from the encounter deck and place your ship on one of the 3 origin bases based on the number in the bottom left corner of the encounter card. Each base also has a starting bonus that you receive, either 1,000 credits, free cargo, or free starting mission. In a 2-player game, the player with the highest number goes first, and you redraw if both of you drew the same number. On your turn, you will start off by calibrating your ship, which means checking the number on the card on the top of the encounter discard pile, and adding a number of cards equal to that number into a face-down pile in front of you. Flip a card from the deck if there is no discard. If the number is a 6, you get to choose how many encounters you draw. Then you have the option of prepping for a journey, which means choosing which base you want to go to and adding a number of encounter cards equal to the number in the top left of the base that you are going to. Then you can also reveal a mission card if you have one and choose to do so, and you follow the instructions on the mission card. You can purchase cargo for 1,000 credits each. Then you set your systems, which means choosing a number to place the red triangle on for your weapons and a number to place the blue dome on for your engines. You can split these up based on the number of systems allowed by your ship. Starting ships have 4 systems that you can set, so you could do 2 weapons and 2 engines, or 3 weapons and 1 engine, or 1 weapon and 3 engines. These will be spent during your encounters. The next step is to face the encounters drawn. You are going to need to go through the entire pile of encounters that you set out during pre-launch unless an encounter allows you to discard the rest of the encounters. Many of the encounters will be ships from one of the 4 factions. Some ships are peaceful and will not do anything to you regardless of your faction, but you can still choose to fight them. And you can fight any ship regardless of your faction. Ships have rewards for when you choose to fight them, and to fight them you will have to spend a combination of weapons and engine systems and sometimes hull that are listed on the card in order to defeat them. Some ships will target you if your reputation is from one of the opposing factions, and some will even target you if you are neutral and meet other conditions as well. If the ship is targeting you, then you either have to fight them or flee them, spending the systems listed. If you cannot fight or flee, then you must take damage to your hull as listed. If your hull ever falls below where your piece of cargo is, then you will lose that cargo. And if your hull ever drops below 1, then you fail the encounters phase and have to be rescued, which is free for tier 1 ships but is going to cost you credits for your upper tier ships as listed. You also must spend 1,000 credits per hull that you want to repair, and you must repair at least 1 hull if you needed rescuing. Some encounters are mercenaries for hire. In a 2-player game, your opponent can choose to pay the listed hire cost to hire a mercenary, and then you draw a card from the encounter deck and follow the instructions based on the number on that encounter card, which may have your opponent steal a mission, cause you to jettison cargo, add encounters to your encounter deck, or even cause you to take hull damage. There are other encounters as well that will do various things, including encounters that will allow you to draw a base and give you the option to skip the rest of your encounters and land on that base instead of your original base. If you are on a mission that reads Survive All Encounters, then you will fail that mission if you decide to land on the new base. Otherwise, you can still complete missions by going to the new base. Some missions will add ship upgrades that you place above your ship and give ongoing benefits. Some missions just give you more credits, and some will even give you a valor point. Once you land on a base, you can then conduct business based on what is listed on that particular base. You can always sell cargo for 2,000 credits, and some of the bases add to the credits that you receive. You can always repair your ship for 1,000 credits per hull repaired. And some will allow you to pay for new missions. Some will include the ability to upgrade to a new ship for 9,000 credits. Some give various bonuses, and some will affect your reputation when you land. Some also affect the reputation when drawn as well. Now, upgrading to a new ship will allow you to have more system points to assign, sometimes more cargo storage, sometimes more hull strength, as well as different maximums for weapons and engines, and the ability to hold more missions, as your original ones only allowed you to hold 2 missions, then 3, and then 4. Tier 2 ships also grant a Valor Point, and Tier 3 ships grant 2 Valor Points. Now, you can choose any ship except the one owned by another player when you are upgrading, even when upgrading from a Tier 2 to a Tier 3. When you upgrade a ship, you start with a full hull, so there is no need to repair your old ship before trading in. Your new ship also keeps any upgrades that you have. Now, how do you win the game? Either your opponent goes broke by losing all hull spaces and not being able to afford a rescue and repairing at least one hull, or you win by Valor Points. The game is a race to 8 Valor Points, which you gain from some mission cards, discovering some bases, from upgrading ships, and from having credits in your account. 1 to 4 victory points can be earned as you go up in credits. The game also ends after the final base is revealed, and whoever has the most Valor Points at the end of the player's turn wins. In the case of a tie, play continues until a player gains an additional point. The solo mode has you choose one of 2 opponents, purple being the easier one, and either the loyal or aggressive path, which alters how the solo opponents interact when mercenaries show up during your encounters. The solo opponent does not take typical turns. Instead, the opponent progresses on their track when you have to reshuffle the encounter deck or need a rescue. This track awards them Valor Points, as well as certain points on the track have them draw a mission or a base. If the base or mission has a Valor Point on it, then the opponent gains that Valor Point, otherwise the mission is discarded. All bases go out on their side and can be visited. Mission cards with ship upgrades on them cause you to choose either to lose 2,000 credits or allow the opponent to draw another card, risking allowing the opponent to gain a Valor Point through the new card. The solo opponent's ship goes on the path card, and every time a mercenary shows up during your encounters, you follow the instructions where the opponent is on the track and then move them forward. Sometimes they will hire a mercenary depending on the situation, and sometimes they'll just move down the track. If they steal a mission from you, then they get that card, and any victory points from that card is awarded to them, including the special Keep Hidden Victory Points card. The opponent also sometimes draws a base or a mission, and one space has the opponent move down on their solo card. Just like in a 2-player game, the game is a race to 8 Valor Points. The opponent scores points for the number on their solo card that they have advanced to, plus any victory points on missions and bases that are in front of them. And if the solo opponent ever reaches 8 victory points, the game ends immediately and you lose. Likewise, you win if you get to 8 victory points first. You can also lose if you go broke and cannot repair your ship. And the game will also end after the last base is revealed, and you win if you have more Valor Points than the solo opponent, and lose if you have less Valor Points than them. And in the case of a tie, play continues until you or the solo opponent gains another Valor Point. And that is how this game plays. Now let's get to my thoughts on the game. Let's start out with the art and components. The components are generally what you would expect from a small box game like this, overall fairly basic. The cards are a pretty good quality, and to save space, upgraded ship cards are dual-sided, one side being the Tier 2 and the other side being the Tier 3. And the solo cards are on the opposite side of the reputation cards, and so you'll just flip one of those over depending on which one you're going to play against. And the path card is dual-sided as well. The ship tokens are good, and markers for weapons, engines, and hull are all unique and good as well. The cargo is represented by translucent green cubes that are actually pretty chunky. You also have wooden cylinders for tracking your reputation and translucent discs for choosing the base you're going to. For a small box game, the components are pretty good, with the ships being the highlight here. Now let's get into the ease of play. This game is not hard to learn, but there were a couple things that, at least to me, were not clearly illuminated in the instructions. I will say that applying a little common sense could solve those issues, but I like to be certain that what I think is correct is actually correct. I did have the advantage of being able to speak with the designer of the game with questions that I had, and I admit that I may feel like I need to be certain of the proper way to play, more so than the average person who might play this and feel much more comfortable just ruling on the fly over rule ambiguities. The instructions do a great job, though, of breaking down every phase and what to do, and the iconography and instructions on the cards are very clear and easy to understand what you need to do. The operation of the solo opponent is also easy to learn and requires very little overhead to keep up with. Now let's get into the gameplay itself. I enjoy the gameplay both solo and two-player. There are very few differences between the feel of these two modes of play. The game does have a high degree of luck throughout the game, so be aware of that going into this. The luck comes in the form of what you will face in your encounters. They may wind up being mostly allied forces that ignore you, or you could get attacked a lot. And the game offers you ways to press your luck a bit, both in how many encounters you're going to take on, as well as opportunities to decide to stop and land on a new base versus pressing on. The biggest luck-based component to me is in the form of how you will gain valor points. You may reveal a base and get a valor point, or not. And you may draw missions with valor points, or not. The same goes to a certain degree with whether you will face ships to fight for valor points, although I do find those ships have to wait until you have upgraded ships anyway, so those ones felt less like you needed them to come up to win than the bases and mission cards with their valor points. Then again, points from upgrading your ship and from gaining money are a little more certain if you want to pursue those paths to victory, and then maybe pick up a couple points from elsewhere. The gameplay is very thematic and a bit suspenseful as you flip cards and hope that you can handle everything the encounter deck throws at you. It starts out easier at first with being in neutral and having certain cards ignore you or give you less downsides for your tier 1 ship, but when you have been pressed into allying with a faction and you start to upgrade your ship, the likeliness of bad things happening increases and the suspense builds a little more. Take that element found in the mercenaries is an interesting component and offers a bit of balance in that the opponent has to spend money to hire the mercs, and they are risking it not being worth the money to hire them. I found the decision to hire a merc or not to hire one to be a tough one as we tried to weigh the pros and cons. And the way the mercenaries are implemented in the solo game, where sometimes the solo opponent hires and sometimes it does not, replicated the gameplay experience to a certain degree of the two-player game. Although with a little bit more knowledge going in as to what might happen. For instance, you could know if you have a certain reputation, then the solo opponent won't hire this time around. Or if you didn't have cargo, they wouldn't hire this time around. And you can decide to plan accordingly. I also like that the confrontation in the game is limited to just the hiring of mercenaries. There are no other elements of attacking one another, but do keep in mind that those mercenaries can be ruthless in the right situation. Another interesting decision at times in the game is whether to fight a ship or not, especially when you don't even have to flee. Fighting a ship spends resources that you may need later in the encounters and shifts your reputation to perhaps put you at more risk, especially when going from neutral to another reputation. This adds to the push your luck a bit as you decide to spend more resources to fight now or risking not having those resources later. I also like the progression in the game as you start out with this weaker ship and very little money, and as you make money you can upgrade your ship to be able to do more, plus you can obtain upgrades that will help you face encounters. Also, the decision on which ship to take depends on your strategy for the game. Do you want to focus more on delivering cargo? Then go with the ship that holds more cargo. Do you want to fight ships more, particularly the stronger ships that can give you valor points? Then get one of the ships that gives you more system settings and perhaps even the one with more weapons over more engines. Though I find there is a high risk going with the strongest weapons but less engine power ship. But then again, more risk may mean more reward. Now the solo game offers basically 4 difficulty levels, 2 difficulties for opponents, and then 2 different paths that tweak the difficulty slightly. You can start with the purple loyal difficulty and then move to either orange loyal or purple aggressive, and then eventually work up to orange aggressive. I did win all 4 of my solo plays, playing 1 game at each combination, and I found that I barely won against the orange aggressive with the solo opponent actually getting to 7 points before me, and had it gotten lucky and drawn 1 more point would have beaten me before I managed to get to the 8 points. There is definitely some tension in the solo game when you play against the orange opponent. but you can mitigate some of what it is able to do by paying attention to the path and trying to keep from meeting the higher qualifications, as well as not taking on too many encounters, which will push the solo opponent up the track quicker and give it more draws of bases and missions that have the potential to be points. Also, the decision whether to spend 2,000 credits when it draws a mission with a ship upgrade versus risking just letting it draw another mission card is a very interesting choice, with risk associated with letting it draw another card, but also weighing, is it worth spending the money that you might just need, or might just be the difference between getting the 8th point by increasing on that credit track. One thing that I would like to point out is that there seems to be a first player advantage in the 2-player game, with the game being a race to 8 points, or ending immediately whenever the last base is revealed, since there can be an imbalance in turns from both of these win conditions. And there does not seem to be any balancing factor to that I could notice. The starting bases seem to have similar value, with if any being stronger, it would be the person starting on the 5 to 6 base. Since they start with a mission they can immediately try to complete on their first turn, although if this is an advantage, it's only a marginal advantage. The suggestion I would put forth here is for the game to play equal turns, and if this results in a tie, keep going until the tie is broken, and that would eliminate the first player advantage. Overall, I have enjoyed the gameplay for both the solo and 2-player modes of play. Now let's get into the replayability of the game. This game has modest replayability. I think with more encounter cards, bases, and upgraded ships, that this game would be much more replayable than it currently is. There is an expansion available for this game called Alien Legend, which does add a few more encounters, missions, and bases, as well as card types specific to the expansion, which could add to the replayability. I haven't played it myself, so I can't exactly speak to all of that. This game is certainly not a one and done, as the randomization of encounters and bases changing up one's strategy some certainly gives this game some replay value. I do feel it could use some expansion in the future that adds more variability to the game to really increase the replay value on this game. Now let's get into my final thoughts on the game. This game is easy to learn, has modest replayability, and I have enjoyed my plays thus far of this game. I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10, which means I find this to be a good game. I will warn you that this game has a high degree of luck involved in it, both with the encounters you face, as well as the opportunities to score valor points being quite random. If you are okay with a substantial level of luck as far as what opportunities come out for you and then trying to make the best of those situations, then I can certainly recommend this game to you. It has a good feel of progression for a short 45-minute to an hour game as you level up your ship and strive to gain money for fulfilling missions, fighting ships, and delivering cargo. There are certainly quite a few strategic choices along the way, so it's not all about luck. Being willing to push your luck in this game can also be a strategy that can either help you win or cause you to crash and burn over a more conservative approach. Then again, a slower and steadier approach focused on solid progression with lower risk could also be a key to victory. There are a few paths to victory you can focus on, between focusing on missions, focusing on fighting ships, or focusing on gaining lots of credits to gain up to 4 of the 8 valor points needed to win just through credits alone, or striking a balance between the various paths. There is a certain degree of take that in this game when it comes to hiring mercenaries, but I also found this not to be a given choice because you could find it not being worth the money depending on the result. I also like the feeling of suspense as you face encounters and hoped you have the ability to handle the last few cards that come up at times when luck hasn't been in your favor or where you've pushed things a bit in favor of some rewards from the encounters. The game plays well both as a solo game and as a 2-player game, with the gameplay feeling very similar between both modes of play. The solo mode has 2 opponents of differing difficulty and 2 paths related to mercenary hiring that will affect difficulty as well, and on the highest difficulty I did found it to be competitive. I can recommend this game for both solo and 2-player if you enjoy simple games with push your luck elements to them. I hope you found this video informative as to whether this is a game for you or not. If you are viewing this in time, you can get the game at a discount from GameCrafter.com during their sale from September 2nd through the 9th. The link is in the description below. And if you haven't already done so, I encourage you to subscribe to my channel and check out a couple of these videos. And I will catch you in the next video, and game on.